The first time Alpha King Grant Whitmore denied Lena Parker, he did it in a room built to make every word permanent. The High Council chamber was full before sunrise, crowded with pack elders, treaty envoys, and scribes waiting to record the terms of a border agreement that had taken 6 months to negotiate. Lena stood behind the second row of advisors with a leather folder against her chest, exactly where Grant had asked her to stand. For years earlier, in a quiet chapel beneath the Eastern Tower, he had placed a silver ring on her finger and promised that the secrecy would be temporary. He had called her his mate, his future Luna, and the one person he trusted when the crown became too heavy. Since then, there had always been a reason to wait. A rebellion in the north, his father's death, a succession dispute, then this treaty. Lena had waited through all of it because Grant had never asked her to doubt his love, only his timing. That morning, Council Chairman Malcolm Voss rose from his seat and said the neighboring Ashford pack wanted certainty before signing. Their Alpha's daughter, Evelyn Shaw, was unmarried, respected, and politically useful. Voss looked directly at Grant. "Does Lena Parker stand before this council as your mate?" The room went so still Lena could hear the scratch of a scribe's pen. Grant sat beneath the black wolf crest, one hand resting on the carved arm of his chair. His eyes found Lena for half a second. She expected him to say what he had said in private the night before. "We will tell them soon. Just get me through the signing." Instead, he looked back at Voss. "No, there is no recognized bond between Lena Parker and me." Someone near Lena inhaled sharply. Grant continued before she could move. "Nothing stands in the way of the council discussing an alliance with Evelyn Shaw." The words were careful, legal, bloodless. They also did exactly what Voss had asked. They erased 4 years in less than 10 seconds. Lena did not cry. That surprised her more than the denial itself. She simply closed the folder, set it on the table beside the nearest clerk, and waited until the council moved on to trade routes. Grant did not look at her again. Perhaps he thought she understood. She had understood him for years. That was the problem. When the session finally adjourned, Grant was immediately surrounded by envoys. Lena walked through the side corridor to the throne hall. The great room was empty, washed in cold morning light. She stopped at the black stone throne where Grant received petitions every Monday. Then she looked down at the ring on her left hand. It was simple silver, engraved inside with 3 words only they knew. "When I can." He had said them the night he gave it to her. "When I can, I will choose you where everyone can see." Lena pulled the ring free. For a moment, the pale circle it had left around her finger looked more intimate than the ring itself. She placed it in the center of the throne seat, where Grant could not possibly miss it. Then she went upstairs, packed one suitcase, and left the palace through the servants' gate. Grant found the ring 40 minutes later. He had dismissed the final envoy and gone looking for Lena because he wanted to explain that the statement had been temporary, necessary, strategic. Instead, he entered the throne hall and saw a small silver circle shining against black stone. He stopped so suddenly his guard nearly walked into him. "Where is Lena?" Grant asked. No one answered. By noon, her rooms were empty. By 1, the palace steward brought him 3 keys, a sealed resignation from Lena's position in the royal archives, and a single sheet of paper in her handwriting. Grant broke the seal with unsteady fingers. The message contained only 2 sentences. "You asked the kingdom to believe I was nothing to you. I will not spend another year proving you wrong in private." Grant read Lena's notes 6 times before he understood that there was no hidden invitation inside it. She had not written that she needed space. She had not told him to come after her. She had not even accused him of choosing Evelyn. She had simply ended the waiting. At first, pride made him believe she would return. Lena had left after arguments before, and each time they had repaired things in private. But by the second morning, breakfast sent to her rooms came back untouched. By the third, the royal archivist reported that Lena had transferred every active file to her deputy with precise instructions. This was not a cooling-off period. She had made a clean exit. Where did she go? Grant demanded. The steward hesitated. "Meadow Creek, Your Majesty. Her aunt owns a boarding house there." Grant knew the place. Lena had spent summers there as a teenager. It was 20 miles south of the palace and just far enough from the capital that people stopped caring who entered through the front door. He ordered a carriage. Then Evelyn Shaw arrived unannounced. Evelyn was not the woman the court had described in its whispers. She was 30, practical, dark-haired, and visibly annoyed by the entire situation. She walked into Grant's office without waiting for permission and dropped a copy of the council transcript on his desk. Did you deny your mate because my father's advisors suggested you marry me? Grant's jaw tightened. The bond was never formally registered. That was not my question. He stared at her. Evelyn folded her arms. For the record, I am not interested in becoming Lena because another woman was publicly humiliated into making the position available. You do not understand the treaty. Then explain it. Grant began repeating Voss's argument about stability, perception, and the Ashford Council needing certainty. Evelyn listened until he finished. Then she said, I never agreed to marry you, Grant. You should ask yourself who decided that was necessary. Grant felt something cold move through his chest. Voss said the Ashford Council needed certainty. Then read the original correspondence instead of repeating his summary. She turned to leave, then stopped. And if Lena comes back, it should not be because you send guards to fetch her. By afternoon, Grant was on the road to Meadow Creek alone except for his driver. He found Lena behind the boarding house, hanging clean sheets on a line beside her Aunt Clara. She wore a plain gray dress, her hair tied back, no palace jewelry, no ring. For one irrational second, Grant was angry at how ordinary she looked without him. Then Lena saw him. She did not freeze. She did not brighten. She simply handed Clara the last sheet and walked toward the porch. You came quickly, she said. You left quickly. I had practice imagining it. That landed harder than he expected. Grant held out her note. I denied a recognized bond. Legally, that is different from denying what we are. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Was the council supposed to hear the difference? Lena, were the scribes? He had no answer. She stepped past him and opened the front door. I have work. Come home tonight. We can settle this privately. Her expression changed then, not into anger but disbelief. Privately is where you have loved me for 4 years, Grant. Publicly is where you decided I did not exist. He lowered his voice. I was protecting the treaty. No, you were protecting yourself from choosing. Grant reached for her hand and stopped when she moved it behind her back. Lena glanced at the gesture. Do not do that unless I ask you to. He let his hand fall. She entered the boarding house. Before she closed the door, she added, a clerk from the Southern Magistrate will contact you tomorrow. About what? My petition to transfer out of the royal household and dissolve any unregistered claim the crown may assert over me. Grant stared at her. You filed a release petition? Lena nodded. Yesterday morning. The door closed between them. For the first time since she left, Grant understood that Lena was not waiting for him to say the right thing. She was building a life in which his words no longer decided what happened next. The release petition reached the palace at 9 the next morning, stamped by Magistrate Henry Cole and accompanied by a 30-day notice required under PAC law. Grant knew the statute. Because their bond had never been registered, Lena could transfer districts without his approval. His first instinct was to challenge the petition with the private chapel record. Then he considered registering the bond retroactively. Both ideas would keep her legally attached to him, and both made him hear how quickly fear could turn love into ownership. He signed acknowledgement of receipt and sent it back without objection. Then he summoned Malcolm Voss. The council. Chairman arrived calm and perfectly dressed. You told me the Ashford Treaty required marital availability. I told you their council wanted certainty. Evelyn says marriage was never required. Voss's expression barely changed. Political certainty takes many forms. A king with an unrecognized omega presents uncertainty. Grant stood. She is my mate. Then why did you never register her? That question was cruel because it was fair. Grant had a dozen explanations and suddenly hated all of them. Registration would have forced a public announcement before the kingdom had fully accepted his reign. It would have angered old families who wanted him matched to a noble Lena. It would have made Lena a target. Each reason had sounded responsible when he used it. Together, they formed a pattern. Grant had always asked Lena to carry the cost of his caution. Voss continued, You chose the exact language in council, Your Majesty. I did not put the words in your mouth. Grant dismissed him, but could not dismiss that sentence. Later that day, the archive deputy brought a box of Lena's unfinished personal materials. Inside were copies of schedules, old council invitations, and 3 folded notes in Grant's handwriting. Not yet, one said. After winter, said another. Let me get through the succession vote. He remembered writing each one. At the bottom was a ledger of dates. The first promised announcement, the the postponed registration, the state dinner she was asked to skip, the day he told her to use the East Corridor. There were no dramatic comments. That made the pattern worse. Grant closed the ledger and rode to Meadow Creek again without sending notice. Clara met him at the door and refused to let him inside. She is at the schoolhouse, she said. She volunteered to reorganize their records. Grant found Lena at a long table surrounded by stacks of enrollment papers. Sunlight fell through dusty windows. She looked up when he entered. You signed the petition. Yes. Thank you. The gratitude hurt more than anger. Grant placed the ledger on the table. I found this. Lena's shoulders stiffened. You were not supposed to. Why did you keep it? She turned one page with her fingertip. Because I started thinking I was unreasonable. Every delay had a good explanation. Every private apology sounded sincere. So I wrote down what actually happened. Grant sat across from her. I loved you. I know. I still do. I know that too. He almost laughed because she had made love sound irrelevant. Maybe, in this moment, it was. Then tell me what I can fix. Lena looked at him. You keep asking how to repair the last morning. I am telling you the last morning was only the first time you said it where I could no longer pretend not to hear it. Grant's throat tightened. When did I lose you? Not when I took off the ring. Her voice remained steady. You lost me a little every time you asked me to wait for a life you were already living. He looked down at the ledger. Lena continued. I am not moving to punish you. I am moving because I need to know what my life looks like when I stop arranging it around your courage. Grant left the schoolhouse without asking her to return. As he reached his horse, Henry Cole approached with another document for Lena's signature. Grant recognized the seal before he could stop himself from reading the heading. District Transfer Request, Cedar Ridge. The 30-day release was not symbolic. Lena had already accepted a records position in another territory. Cedar Ridge was 40 miles beyond the southern boundary, far enough that Lena would no longer wake under Grant's laws or pass roads marked with the Whitmore wolf crest. The thought stayed with him through the week leading to Founders Night, the largest formal gathering of the year. For 4 years, Lena had attended under the harmless title of senior archivist, quietly managing details no one noticed until she was gone. This year, her chair remained empty. Grant noticed it before he noticed the hundreds of guests. Voss noticed too. During dinner, the chairman leaned close. The optics are becoming difficult. If we announce a formal courtship with Evelyn tonight, the rumors will settle. Grant stared at him. There will be no courtship. Then what was the purpose of your statement before council? Grant did not answer. Across the hall, Evelyn raised her glass and stood. The room quieted because everyone assumed the announcement was coming from her. Before anyone invents a future for me, she said, I would like to save us time. There is no marriage arrangement between House Shaw and King Whitmore, and there will not be one. A ripple moved through the tables. Evelyn looked directly at Voss. I asked the king to read our original correspondence. I suggest this council do the same. Grant saw several council members turn toward the chairman. Voss's face remained controlled. After the banquet, Grant ordered the original Ashford correspondence brought from the locked diplomatic archive. He read every letter himself. The truth was worse than he expected. The treaty required military cooperation, timber access, and mutual border defense. It required no wedding. There were concerns about succession and stability, but no marriage condition. Voss had taken a political preference and presented it as necessity. Grant could have blamed the chairman. For 10 minutes, he almost did. Then he remembered Lena asking whether the scribes were supposed to hear the difference in his denial. Voss had created pressure. Grant had chosen surrender. The next morning, he suspended Voss from treaty negotiations. The older nobles protested. Grant let them. At Meadow Creek, Lena received a copy of Evelyn's Founders Night statement from Clara. She read it once, folded it, and went back to packing books. Clara watched her from the doorway. Does it change anything? It changes why he did it, Lena said. Not that he did it. Clara nodded. Do you still love him? Lena stopped with a book in her hand. That is the annoying part. Love usually is. Lena smiled without humor. I thought leaving would make the feeling disappear. It only made the waiting disappear. 2 days later, Grant arrived at Meadow Creek carrying no guards, no flowers, and no royal seal. Lena found him sitting on the porch steps because Clara had refused to let him inside again. Your aunt is consistent, he said. She likes rules. I am beginning to understand the appeal. Grant looked at the packed crates visible through the window. Cedar Ridge? Yes. When? 3 weeks. He nodded as if she had given him the weather. I read the Ashford letters. You were right. The marriage was never required. Lena sat on the opposite end of the porch. I am not glad. Neither am I. Did you remove Voss because he misled you, or because you need someone else to blame? The question cut cleanly. Grant took his time. Both, at first. Lena glanced at him. And now? Now I know he gave me an excuse I was already looking for. I wanted a way to keep the council calm without risking my position. You were the risk I decided I could postpone. For the first time since she left, Lena's anger showed. I was not a risk. I was a person. I know. No. You know now. Grant accepted that. They sat in silence until Clara opened the door and announced that supper was ready for one person. Grant stood. Before leaving, he said, there is another council vote next week. They want to formalize an alliance path with Evelyn despite what she said. Lena's eyes narrowed. What will you do? Grant looked toward the road. Something I should have done before I asked you to pay for my fear. He did not tell her what. For once, he wanted his next action to exist before he asked her to believe in it. The council vote was scheduled for Tuesday morning. On Monday night, Grant took the silver ring from the locked drawer in his study and carried it to the throne hall. He had hidden it in a drawer after she left because he could not bear seeing it. Now he placed it back on the black stone as a reminder of the truth. He had asked Lena to accept love in private while he protected power in public. At Meadow Creek, Lena spent that same evening labeling crates for Cedar Ridge. She had accepted a 6-month district archive contract and a small room above the office. She wanted work earned under her own name, far from whispers that every achievement came from sleeping near a throne. Grant arrived after dark. Clara opened the door, saw him, and sighed. You are becoming a weather pattern. I will leave if Lena asks. Clara considered him, then called upstairs. Lena came down wearing an old blue sweater over her dress. It was the least royal thing Grant had ever seen her wear, and the sight nearly undid him. She stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. The vote is tomorrow, she said. I know. Should you not be at the palace? Probably. She folded her arms. Why are you here? Grant had rehearsed answers on the ride south. None survived her face. I wanted to ask what I have to do to bring you home. Lena shut her eyes briefly. Grant knew before she spoke that he had failed again. That is still the wrong question. I know it sounded, no. Listen. She stepped closer. You keep treating my leaving like a problem to solve. You are still standing at the center of the story. You want to know what action earns the ending you prefer. Grant said nothing. Home was the palace when I believed I had a future there. Then home became the place where I was asked to disappear whenever my existence became inconvenient. I am not trying to make you suffer until you deserve me again. Her voice softened. I am trying to find out who I am when I am not waiting for you. Grant looked toward the dark road. So there is nothing I can do. There are many things you can do. You can stop lying to your council. You can stop letting men like Voss use women as treaty pieces. You can stop asking me to be evidence that you have changed. He looked back at her. And us. Lena's expression trembled for the first time. I do not know. That was more frightening than no. Grant reached into his coat, then stopped. The ring was not there. He had almost brought it. He was suddenly grateful he had left it on the throne. I was going to return your ring, he admitted. Why did you not? Because it is not mine to return as if I am giving you your place back. Lena studied him. Where is it? On the throne. Her mouth tightened. That is dramatic. It is also difficult to ignore. A small laugh escaped her before she could prevent it. The sound gave Grant no hope he had earned, but it reminded him of how much he had lost. He stood. Tomorrow, I will vote against the alliance marriage. Because you want me back? No, he forced himself to. Answer correctly. Because I should never have allowed a marriage discussion built on denying you. Lena nodded once. Grant walked to his horse. Before he mounted, she called his name. He turned. Do not make a speech about me unless you are willing to say, I may never come back. Grant felt the weight of that condition settle on him. All right. The next morning, the council chamber filled before sunrise again. The same scribes took their places. The same black wolf crest hung above Grant's chair. The same men who had watched him erase Lena now waited for him to secure Evelyn. Grant looked at the empty space where Lena had once stood, then rose before Voss's allies could call the vote. There will be no alliance marriage, he said. And before this council records another word, I need to correct the record I created myself. Every pen in the room stopped. Grant did not soften the correction. He did not call the denial a misunderstanding, and he did not mention Malcolm Voss until the end. 3 weeks ago, he told the council, I said there was no recognized bond between Lena Parker and me. Legally, that statement was defensible. Personally, it was a lie. The room remained silent. Grant could feel the old instincts telling him to qualify the admission, to preserve dignity, to remind everyone that kings made complicated decisions. He ignored them. For 4 years, Lena was my chosen mate in private. I delayed registering our bond because I feared political opposition. When this council questioned whether she stood in the way of an alliance, I denied her publicly because I wanted the advantages of our bond without accepting its cost. One of the elders shifted uncomfortably. Grant continued, Lena has filed for release from the royal household. I will not contest it. She owes me no return, no forgiveness, and no public appearance to make this confession easier. Evelyn sat at the treaty table beside her father's envoy. Her expression did not change, but she gave Grant the smallest nod. A councilman named Robert Hale rose. Your Majesty, are you saying the kingdom should accept instability because an Omega's feelings were hurt? Grant looked at him. I am saying, stability purchased by pretending a person does not exist is not stability. Hale opened his mouth again. Evelyn spoke first. And the Ashford Pact will sign the Trade and Defense Treaty without any marriage clause. That ended the argument more effectively than Grant could have. By noon, the agreement passed. The kingdom did not collapse. No border war began. Grant then signed a narrow directive requiring written consent for any royal courtship or mating arrangement tied to diplomacy. At Meadow Creek, Lena received a certified copy of the council transcript from Henry Cole. She almost refused to read it. Then she saw the first line of Grant's correction and sat down at Clara's kitchen table. By the time she reached the sentence saying she owed him no return, her eyes were wet. Clara pretended not to notice. Does it change anything? She asked later. Lena folded the pages carefully. It changes something. Enough. I do not know. Grant had finally told the truth where it cost him something, but only after losing her. Lena could respect the act without erasing the years before it. That evening, Grant wrote Lena a letter. He rewrote it 4 times before settling on 6 lines. I corrected the record today. I am not sending this so you will come back. Henry will give you the transcript if you want it. I will not contact you again unless you ask. Your release hearing remains uncontested. I am sorry I made your love a private privilege and your existence a public inconvenience. He sealed the letter and sent it with no gift. Lena read it twice, then put it in the drawer beside Grant's old notes. Not yet. After winter. Let me get through the vote. His new letter felt different because it asked nothing. For the first time in years, silence between them did not feel like another period she was required to endure. It felt like space she owned. Over the next 2 weeks, Grant kept his word. He did not visit Meadow Creek. He did not send guards. He did not ask Clara for updates. Lena expected relief. She felt it. She also felt the absence of him in ways she had not prepared for. On the morning of her release hearing, she entered the Southern Magistrates' Hall and found Grant seated in the back row alone. Her pulse jumped. Henry Cole approached her quietly. The king has a legal right to attend. Lena nodded. Has he filed an objection? No. When the hearing began, Henry asked Grant to stand. Does the Crown contest Lena Parker's transfer from the royal household? Grant looked at Lena before answering. No. Does the Crown assert any private bond as grounds to delay the transfer? Grant's jaw tightened. No. Henry looked at Lena. Then the petition can proceed. Lena should have felt victorious. Instead, as Grant sat down without trying to stop her, she realized this was the first important choice in their relationship he had allowed her to make without asking what it would cost him. The release was approved provisionally for 60 days, after which Lena could finalize her move to Cedar Ridge with no remaining claim from the royal household. She signed the first document with a steady hand. When Henry offered Grant a copy, he took it without speaking. Outside the magistrate's hall, Lena found him beside the stone steps. Why did you come? She asked. Grant folded the document once. Because I wanted to hear your answer from you, not from a clerk. And if I finalize it, then I will respect it. She searched his face. You are giving up easily. No, he looked tired. I am trying to stop confusing fighting for you with fighting your decisions. Lena did not know what to say to that. Grant stepped aside so she could pass. Goodbye, Lena. She walked 10 feet before turning. Grant. He stopped. You may write to me. Surprise crossed his face. How often? Once a week. Not every day. Once a week. And do not send poetry. I have never written poetry. Exactly. Let us protect what remains of your dignity. Grant laughed, a real laugh, and Lena hated how familiar it sounded. The letters began 3 days later. They were not love letters. Grant wrote about ordinary palace disasters, council frustrations, and Voss's review without using any of it as an excuse. Lena answered when she wanted, writing about Cedar Ridge, Clara, and her work. On paper, neither of them could interrupt the other. In the 4th week, the review. Into Malcolm Voss uncovered missing archive pages from earlier mate declarations, treaty negotiations, and household registrations. Because Lena had managed those records for years, Henry sent her a formal paid request to audit the files as an independent consultant. Grant did not contact her personally. The request included the right to decline, and Lena accepted only after adding one condition. Her findings would go directly to the full council, not through the king's office. Grant signed that condition without alteration. When Lena entered the palace a week later, no servant directed her through the east corridor. The main doors were open. She paused beneath the high archway, remembering every time Grant had asked her to use a side entrance to avoid gossip. A guard bowed. Miss Parker, the council is ready for you. Not Lady. Not Luna. Not the King's Omega. Her own name. Grant was already seated when she entered the chamber. He did not rise dramatically. He did not cross the room. He simply met her eyes and said, "Thank you for coming." Lena laid out the audit clearly. Several files had been selectively summarized before reaching the council, including the Ashford correspondence and older household bond records. Near the end, Robert Hale leaned back and said, "This is an unusual amount of authority to give a woman who abandoned the royal household." Lena opened her mouth. Grant spoke first. Ms. Parker did not abandon the royal household. She resigned from it. Hale frowned. The distinction is hardly relevant. It is the difference between a servant who flees and a citizen who chooses. Grant's voice was calm. Address her findings, councilman, not her relationship with me. The room shifted. Lena felt it. Not because Grant had defended her honor. She no longer needed that. Because he had defended her authority without claiming her. The council ordered the archive review expanded and adopted Lena's recommendation that future treaty summaries be preserved beside the original correspondence. Afterward, Lena walked alone into the throne hall. She told herself she was taking a shorter route to the exit. Then she saw the ring. It still sat in the center of the black stone throne, exactly where she had left it. Grant entered behind her, but stopped several feet away. Lena did not turn. "You really left it there?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because every Monday I sit beside it and remember what happens when I decide another person can wait for my courage." Lena looked at him. "That sounds miserable." "It is educational." She almost smiled. Grant took one step closer. "I will move it if you want." Lena looked at the silver circle, then at him. "No." His expression tightened, unsure how to interpret that. "Leave it there a little longer." For the first time since she walked out of the palace, Lena was not certain she wanted the ring gone forever. The 60-day deadline arrived in early spring. Lena had already moved half her belongings to Cedar Ridge, but she had not signed the final transfer. The unsigned paper sat on her desk for 3 days. She told herself the delay was practical, but the truth was harder. Lena now looked forward to Grant's weekly letters. He had never treated his public correction as payment for another chance. She had to decide whether the man he was becoming mattered more than the man who had caused her to leave. On the final morning, Henry Cole arrived at Meadow Creek with the transfer document. "I can return tomorrow," he offered. Lena shook her head. "No. I am done letting deadlines make choices for me." She signed one line, then stopped before the final declaration. "What happens if I do not finalize?" "Your provisional release remains valid, but you stay registered in this district unless you file again. And the Crown has waived every claim." Lena looked out the window. "Then I am not trapped either way." "Correct." She put down the pen. "Good." That afternoon, she rode to the palace without sending notice. Grant was in the council chamber reviewing road budgets when the doors opened. Every head turned toward Lena. She walked to the table, placed her unsigned final transfer on the polished wood, and looked at Grant. May I speak with you? He dismissed the room immediately. When they were alone, Grant remained behind his chair as if crossing the distance without permission might ruin everything. Is something wrong? No, Lena glanced around the chamber. That is why I came here. He waited. I spent 4 years hoping you would choose me in this room. Then I spent 2 months proving to myself that I could live if you never did. Grant's face changed, but he said nothing. I can go to Cedar Ridge tomorrow, she continued. I have the job. I have a room. I have a life that does not depend on you. I know. And I need you to know that before I say the next thing. Grant's hands tightened against the chair. Lena took a breath. If there is anything between us again, I will not return as the woman who waits in a side corridor. I will keep my work. I will keep my own money. I will disagree with you in public. If a councilman asks whether I am your mate, you will not need a private meeting to decide whether the answer is inconvenient. Grant's voice was rough. Agreed. I am not finished. Sorry. Lena almost smiled. I do not want the old relationship back. I want to know whether we can build a different one. Grant stared at her as if the room had tilted. Are you asking me to court you? I am asking whether you still want to. Yes. The answer came too quickly. Lena raised an eyebrow. Grant corrected himself. Yes, but I understand that wanting is not deciding. Better. He exhaled. What are the rules? Dinner. Once a week to start. No secret entrances. No council announcements. No touching me because you assume you can. Anything else? Lena looked past him toward the throne hall doors. Bring me the ring tomorrow. Grant went still. Do you want it back? I want to see what it feels like when you hand it to me without a throne involved. He nodded slowly. Tomorrow. Lena left before either of them could turn the moment into a promise bigger than it was. The next evening, Grant met her in the palace garden carrying a small wooden box. No guards or council waited nearby. He opened the box. The silver ring lay inside. I kept wanting to polish it, he said. Why did you not? Because you left it exactly as it was. Lena picked it up. The inside engraving was still visible. When I can. She ran her thumb over the words. I hate this sentence. So do I. Good. Grant looked at her. I can have it changed. Lena considered that. Not yet. She closed her fingers around the ring, but did not put it on. Grant did not ask her to. They walked through the garden and had dinner in a small room beside the library, where no one could confuse privacy with secrecy because the front doors had been open when Lena arrived. At the end of the evening, Grant walked her to her horse. May I kiss you? He asked. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Not tonight. All right. He stepped back. Lena rode away with the ring in her pocket. Halfway to Meadow Creek, she realized she was smiling. 6 months later, Lena still kept a room at Meadow Creek and a desk in the Southern Records office. She had never moved to Cedar Ridge. She had also never moved fully back into the palace. Instead, she and Grant built something inconveniently slow. 1 dinner a week became 2. When Grant canceled plans, he asked to reschedule instead of assuming Lena would wait. When Lena disagreed with him in council, he argued the policy, not the relationship. Voss eventually resigned and left the capital. The silver ring remained in Lena's desk drawer for 3 months. Grant never asked where it was. On the first cold evening of autumn, Lena attended a public council session about the next year's budget. She sat at the main table under her own title, Director of Southern Records and Distribution. When the meeting ended, Robert Hale approached Grant with a stack of documents and, perhaps out of habit, glanced toward Lena. Your Majesty, before the delegation arrives next month, should the official household register list Ms. Parker as, he stopped. 6 months earlier, every person in the chamber would have waited for Grant's answer. Grant looked at Lena instead. That is her decision. Lena closed the folder in front of her. List me as Lena Parker, she said. Hale nodded. Then she added, and as the king's chosen mate, if the register has a place for that without changing my title. Grant went completely still. Evelyn, seated 2 chairs away, covered a smile with her hand. Hale cleared his throat. It does. Then use both. The clerk began writing. Grant did not speak until the room had emptied. Are you sure? Lena looked at him. You asked that after the announcement instead of before. I am improving. Slowly. He smiled. They walked together into the throne hall. The Blackstone throne looked exactly as it had the morning she left, except there was no silver ring on the seat. Lena stood in front of it and remembered placing the ring there with hands that had not shaken until she was outside the palace. Grant stopped beside her. I used to think the worst part of that day was finding the ring. It was not. No. The worst part was realizing I was surprised. Lena looked at him. Grant continued. I had become so certain you would keep waiting that your leaving felt impossible. I am sorry for the man who believed your patience belonged to him. Lena opened her small leather bag and took out the wooden box from the garden. Grant stared at it. You kept the box. It is a good box. She opened it. The ring rested inside. The engraving had changed. Grant noticed immediately. You changed it. Lena handed him the ring. Inside, the old words were gone. In their place were 3 new ones. If we choose. Grant read them twice. We. That is the idea. His eyes lifted to hers. Do you want me to put it on you? Lena held out her left hand. Yes. Grant took the ring, then paused with it just above her finger. Lena Parker, do you choose this? Not the council. Not the crown. Not the old promise. This. Her throat tightened. I do. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit exactly as it always had, yet nothing about the moment felt the same. The public announcement had already happened because Lena chose it. This private moment no longer existed to hide her. Grant touched her hand carefully. May I kiss you? Lena laughed. You have been asking that for 6 months. You told me not to assume. Good lesson. She stepped closer and kissed him first. Later, when they returned to the council chamber, Grant did not walk ahead of her. Lena did not walk behind him. She had left the ring on his throne because he asked her to love him without being seen. She wore it again because he had learned that love could not be recognized when convenient and denied when costly. At the doorway, Grant reached for her hand, then stopped just short. Lena looked at him, smiled, and closed the distance herself.